Hey, I talked a lot on this channel about how you can prioritize things to really focus on the things that are truly important for you in your life, to have a fulfilled life and to feel like you have a positive impact on the world around you. But there's one really important prerequisite that I didn't touch on yet, which I want to focus on in this video, and that is how to say no. And I don't only want to say how to say no, but also why we need to say no. As Nietzsche said, he who has a why to live can bear any how. So why do we say no? The basic reason is actually pretty straightforward and simple. It is because we have limited resources. For instance, you have limited time, limited willpower, limited money, limited strength. Did I already say time? You know what I'm getting at. So there aren't that many things that you can do with these limited resources. Actually, there are almost an infinite amount of things that you cannot do, and only a very small fraction of things that you can do with these resources. And what we actually are, so the basic function of human consciousness is to be able to distinguish between different things at different levels of importance and to act on that. So it is actually the core of your human existence to distinguish on which things are important enough to focus on and then focus on these things or act on these things. So if you are unable to distinguish these or unable to act on that distinguishment, then you are actually corrupting and compromising the core of your existence, of your soul, and you will feel that as feeling unfulfilled in your life, feeling like you are stuck, like you are squeezed, that it doesn't even really matter that you are there. And to a certain extent, that is true. If you are not able to draw the line to the things that are important to you, that you as a human being have distinguished to be important, then there is no difference if you are there or not. So you can see yourself actually as a kind of hero that tries to bring order into this ever chaotic environment, which is our universe. And no is kind of the shield that you have to protect the environment that you have already created order in, or the environment that provides you with the fuel that you need to move on and to actually bring about this order in the world. And many people really intuitively understand that this is the case and know that actually saying no is the right thing to do. It is making the selection between what is important and unimportant. Intuitively, you know this. However, many people, including myself, I think there's no exception in the world, can feel uncomfortable at times saying no. The question is, why is that the case? So what is our relation to saying no if we know that this is actually really important? The reason for that is that a lot of people have been taught or have a certain personality that forbids them to create problems, struggles, or conflict. We have been taught that conflict is a bad thing. I already talked about that in one of my earlier videos on Aries or Mars, the god of war. I tried to explain that having the ability to have war, to have conflict, is so integral and key to being a human being. You cannot push that away. So if you're interested in that, please have a look at that video. But this is basically continuing on that line, saying that we cannot suppress that, but that is the reason why people feel uncomfortable with that. So there are four things that I want to discuss. One is saying no without a reason. The second is saying no with a reason. Then saying no without saying no, which is one of my favorite. And then how you can use no in your advantage. So starting off, saying no without a reason. What I mean by that is that a lot of people feel obligated to give a reason to validate why they are declining something. But if you remember from my introduction, there are an infinite things that you are not doing right now, that you are saying no to implicitly. Therefore, it's actually more important that you have a reason to do what you are doing right now, rather than explaining why you are not doing all of these other things. You can say no without giving a reason for it. The key phrase that you should keep in mind is don't make someone else's problem your problem. So your basic operating mode should be, it's a yes or no question, give a yes or no answer, and just let the other person respond to that. They can ask for explanation if that's necessary, and you can or cannot answer that however you choose. So try not to accept that. You don't have to give a reason. You can say no thanks. If you are actually inclined to do it, but not now, you can say no, not this time. Sometimes there are some social contracts or obligations that will make you feel like you need to give an explanation, but especially in a lot of emails, some requests are even given implicitly, like, so someone is saying, who can help out with this, or we need someone to pick up this and that. That's not a formal request for you to do it. And if you don't feel like you're the person to do it, you have enough to do, don't feel like you need to drop everything and agree, because that's basically what you're doing, agree to you picking up that piece of work. So keep that in mind. You don't need to give a reason to say no, not to friends, not to family, not to anyone. They can ask for it if they need it, and you can decide to give that reason or not. However, moving on to the second topic, which is saying no with a reason, which I think most people will agree is probably the more common situation, partly because we're all social creatures, and also very likely to want to, we are to a certain degree all agreeable because we want to keep peace, or we want to avoid unnecessary conflict. Now, where everyone thinks conflict is unnecessary can vary, but in most cases, it's socially more acceptable if we explain why we are disagreeing with what someone else is proposing. And that can, for instance, be if you have previously agreed upon commitment from your side. One very simple thing can be you are friends with someone, which means you commit to hanging out with each other from time to time if you have the ability to do so. So if a friend asks you, hey, do you want to come out and have a drink with me on Sunday? And you say no, that friend might feel like, oh, that's pretty weird. Why? And maybe even the phrasing of the question is in a way that needs further explanation, right? Because it's not like maybe you don't want to, maybe you don't have the time. Then you say no, because I don't have time. Or you can say I actually want to, but I don't have the time. Can also be the case that you actually don't want to at that moment. In that case, you can say no, I don't want to right now. You can admit that I don't want to. You can say no, not right now. What I really want to highlight here is that you should always avoid saying, no, I'm sorry, if you are not really sorry. And that doesn't even hold for only saying no, it holds for anything. Don't apologize if you're not sorry, and try to stay close to the truth. And don't say more than necessary to explain your situation if you're being asked about it. So 2 examples to give you a bit of context here would be a situation where I didn't give a reason. So at the office, my project lead asked me, so he said, I have this situation, I need to give a presentation, I don't have time. Can you prepare slides for this and this day? I said no. And he said, okay. So that is something that actually works and that you can do. We always think that there's this huge backlash if you just say no, but maybe you're just the first person on the list of someone who wants to ask many people until they get a yes, or maybe if they cannot get it done, they will also find a different way to solve it. So you also don't have to feel the pressure of someone else's world completely crashing if you say no. The second thing that happened is I actually made an agreement. I committed to being at a certain event on a given day, but something came up in my personal life and I had to cancel that event. So I wrote an email and I told them, hey, I can sadly not make it to this event, so I will have to cancel. Well, following that, that person called me and said, okay, I'm very sorry to hear that you cannot join. What happened? Which is also fair because I made the commitment. And I said, something personal came up. and I cannot be there today. It was a pretty short conversation, but it was, in any case, very friendly. And they said, all right, thanks for letting us know in advance. Hope everything is okay. See you next time. And that was it. So you don't have to say more than that. You can keep it pretty concise. You don't need to share everything if you make a cancellation. You will find that people will also trust you on your judgment if you cannot make it. So you can have the feeling that you actually are sorry at that moment, and then you might want to add, I'm sorry, but something important came up, I cannot make it. But you should always ask yourself when you say you're sorry, are you sorry for something that you did? And in this case, it was really out of my control, so I didn't really feel like I had to be sorry. And second, you can be sorry for the situation that you put them in. And then you can say, I'm sorry that this put you in a bad situation. And I think that is fine. In that case, you can say you are sorry. So I hope I didn't rant on too much about these two, but I think these are the two most common ones. So to recap, you should not give reason for saying no in general, but there are situations in which it might be better, or there is a reason for you to explain. For instance, if you had a prior commitment to doing something, but now you find yourself unable to do so. Moving on to the third one, which I'm very excited about. It's a thing that really works well, which is saying no without saying no. And there's one that really tops up all the others. And it's one that I learned from Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference. So it's about negotiation. And the thing that he uses is, instead of saying no, you're asking a question. And the question that he frequently asks is, how am I supposed to do that? And how am I supposed to do that is such a great question, because you're putting yourself in a position of being inferior to the other person. So you say, poor me, I don't know how to solve this problem. How am I supposed to do that? So you're giving the other person some sense of control and authority, but at the same time, you are showing them that according to your knowledge of the world right now, you have no ability to solve their problem for them. No ability, no resources, let's say. Can also be no desire, no want to do it, right? So that is a really powerful one. And then you will also go more into the actual dynamics of what it would require for you to do something like that. So a lot of times it's not unwillingness necessarily, but just the practicality that you have too many things to do. You will get into a situation perhaps where you can say, okay, I have this list of things to do. If you want me to do this, I have to drop something else. That can be a discussion you have with your project lead, for instance. And then your project lead might be fine to say, all right, then you need to drop this and pick this up. And then you align that, and that's fine. You move on with your day. But it can also be that he says, all right, actually, you are right. Don't drop these things because they are more important than this. You cannot do it. But that's a discussion that might go different with different kind of people. And it also matters a lot the maturity level of the person you're speaking with. You should try to focus on you and understand that this is the dynamic. You have a limited number of resources, and you are in charge of distinguishing what is most important and where you want to spend your resources on. So saying no without saying no is basically asking a question back. How am I supposed to do that? Is a very powerful way to do that. And you can also try to rephrase the other person's request or question, or you can say, you can kind of have this mirroring effect where you try to repeat the last three words that they said, or acknowledge that they have a problem, and also say that, wow, that sounds like a tricky situation. What you're actually saying is, wow, that sounds like a tricky situation for you. And unless that person comes with a formal request, you have no reason to pick that up voluntarily. Let them make the formal request to you, and then you can formally say no. Lastly, there is this also really great concept of how you can actually use no to your advantage. So as we discussed in the beginning, people have this natural intuition that saying no is actually the right thing to do, that they need to protect their borders and they need to be in control. At the same time, people don't want to cause any friction, turbulence, or conflict. And these two desires are often conflicting. But if you ask a question to someone else, so now you are the requester in that situation, in a way that you basically pose a socially undesirable question in a negative phrased way. So what you could say is this a crazy request? Or is this a terrible idea? Is this a bad time to talk? Typically what will happen is the people will think, no, it's not a crazy idea. So they will say, no, it's not a crazy idea. And they will have the additional effect of saying no, which intuitively for them means protecting themselves. So they can basically avoid conflict and have the feeling of being in control at the same time. And that's where you can get some easy agreements, not necessarily commitments, but moving them forward into productive kind of interaction with you. So would this be a bad time to like this video? I don't know, guys. If you liked the content, at least give this video a like, comment if you have any other questions or additions to make, and don't forget to have a great day.